Welcome back, folks, and thank you so much for joining us for another soul-driven interview. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Lorri Gifford, psychic and spiritual counselor. Welcome to the Soul-Driven podcast, Lorri.
Thank you.
I'm so
It's
excited to
great to
have
be
you.
here. It's so great to be here.
So, for everyone who's listening, I met Lorri through a local salt cave where she gives tarot readings, and and then kind of serendipitously, a few months later, her and I and Sherry Purbeck, which most of this audience will be familiar with, as she's been on the podcast a few times, all did a little sort of, I don't know, what would you call it? Not a mini conference, but a workshop together. And I loved getting to know Lorri more through that experience. And I was like, I have to have her on the podcast. She's so interesting. And so I'm really excited to have you and really excited to introduce Lorri to everyone. So, again, thank you for being here and sharing your time with us.
Oh, thank you for asking me to be here. It is. I love your smile. I love getting to connect with you. Your energy is just so much fun. So thank
Yay.
you for asking.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so let's dive in. The first question I ask all my guests: what makes you soul driven?
Just feels like it's an automatic kind of go-to now. I was not soul driven for most of my life. I think that's what made me soul driven. I remember once making an appointment with somebody years ago that did Akashic Records, Anna, and I was living in California, and she said to me, "Oh, you need to make an appointment with me because you're not aligned with God."
Hmm.
And I remember saying, F you, I'm going to prove you wrong. And most of my life has been doing things in spite of the messages that I was given that I couldn't do it. Like if someone said I couldn't do something, it would be the first thing that I would go out and do. So I believe that when that the answer to that question is because someone told me I couldn't be soul driven.
Interesting. How old were you?
I was in my early 30s.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a little nerdy side question. I don't know if you know this, but do you have a really strong Uranus in your chart?
I have had my chart done and I do not know. I can't answer
I would
that.
assume you do. If I mean, I have a very strong Uranus in my chart, and it's something that's also been very relevant throughout my life. Is when people are like, no, you can't do this, I'm like, ooh, just watch me.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me use that as motivation. Well, we're all thankful that you're soul driven now. But I'm honestly kind of surprised to hear that, because you have, like, in learning about you and kind of diving into a bit about your background just through your website, I was like, man, she's been like connected forever, I would have thought. And certainly in the midst of the connection that I've had with you. So, because you've been working in the spiritual world for quite a long time, right? How many years now?
over 35. And I will say that at the start of my being in the spiritual world, it was very ego driven. I can come clean and say that now. And that was because at that time, when I was giving readings, I wanted to be right. I wanted that person to like me. I wanted to give them advice. So I was hearing Spirit's voice, but I was also interjecting my own. And the more I got connected to Spirit, the more I became soul driven. The more I saw that what makes, this is my belief and only my belief. I believe that what makes psychics out there tired from working with clients is because they're not soul driven during the session, or they slip out of it. And it's very normal to do. I sometimes find myself going into a space of wanting to help someone so bad that I forget that they're not broken and I don't have to do anything and I don't have to rush in to fix them. The minute I can step back and go, handing them over to you, Spirit, show me what to say, my energy realigns and I leave the sessions feeling energized rather than tired.
That makes complete sense. Absolutely. I know for myself, and I think that that's something that, I'm still in, it's only been a few years for me, and I still like, all right, ego, at the beginning of a session, I'm like, backseat girlfriend. You've got to not be a part of this because I do have a strong opinion. I do have a strong personality. I definitely like to share things and I see things and it has been very much a learning experience for me just to step out of the way and let come through what is meant to come through. And I don't think it is as much of a like wanting people to like me as much as me wanting to share great news. Like I really struggled in the beginning with channeling through some harsher things. And I think that like some of my very first readings were like pretty intense. And I don't think, I know that that was for a specific reason. It was like they were breaking me in, like, you have to give this news and you have to trust that they're going to be able to handle it, that they're going to be able to hear, what you don't think they want to hear. Like, you have to let go of that. So I think that that's a natural path for any reader, any psychic. You know what I mean? I would think that probably few to none would be able to just like jump right in and be able to reach for that higher place and be fully soul driven from the beginning. Don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely know that there's a learning curve with being a reader and channeling and choosing to be soul driven. For me, what it's done is it's really helped me clean up my life. And shown me, for the first time in a long time, about a week and a half ago, I had a session after this person left. It knocked me on my ass. Like, I had not been feeling that way. So I went for a walk. And the way I connect with spirit is it's like a walking companion. I just talk in my head. Like, here's what's going on. What was going on? Show me what was going on. And I got some very clear messages that, well, you were hoping to fix this person. You were falling into their story with them energetically. You were thinking that you had to do something. Let that go. And I let that go, and my energy came back. That same person, I got a call from someone that was their benefactor. She has sent me people and bought spiritual counseling packages for them. And she reached out to me and she said that person, I was the first adult that person felt like they could talk to and that heard them and that was listening, and ended up buying a package. And I had a session again last week, and instead spirit guided it and I gave it fully over, and I left that session feeling so energized. And it was that shift. I needed to see how subtle my own wanting to help, wanting to fix became. And I just thought, well, Lorri, when someone's telling their story, do you want to see beyond that story, or are you going to sharpen your pencil and sit down right next to them and add to that chapter? And I have no interest in doing that. So it was a very valuable learning experience. As readers, as people that work with people at that level, we're in a body. That body is going to go, I like this. This is my advice. This is my opinion. Ooh, here's some information I want to share with that person. And it's about being able to, like you said, go, hold on a minute there. What's coming through you, not what do you want to have come from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful lesson, and I'm personally grateful to hear it, knowing that you are a very successful reader. You know, this is your career. You've been doing this for a long time, and you still have these moments. That's good to hear, you know, so I'll be a little bit kinder to myself. Okay, awesome. So before we dive like too deep, well, I mean, I feel like there's a lot there for us to unpack. And I think it's interesting how you and I were kind of talking about how we communicate with spirit before we started recording. And then this is a bit of where we find ourselves. But I want to take a step back because I want to know more about your background. And I would love for you to just kind of share with us. You know, you've, as you shared, you've been reading for over 35 years. And you also shared that, you know, prior to some of that, or potentially in the middle of it, I'm not sure where it is on the timeline for you, but you very much weren't soul driven. So I'd love to know more about, you know, just kind of a bit of your background, how you came to the work that you're doing today.
Sure. My intuition, when I was younger, I grew up in a household that my parents got divorced when I was 10. They got divorced during the 70s, so it was a time when divorce wasn't the norm. And I ended up living with my mom and my younger brother. My mom was mentally ill. And at a very young age, at age 10, I became the mother of the household. I know that my own intuition developed very strongly because it was my way of protecting myself. It was my way of insulating myself and keeping people at bay. That's how I know that it developed for me. Also, I had this sense that everybody could do it. I didn't see what I was doing or feeling as anything different. I mean, I grew up in a trailer. We were on welfare. You know, we got government cheese. So there was no one really that I could talk to about it. You know, my mom was depressed. She spent days in bed, didn't even get up. And so there was really no adults around me that I could say, hey, let me talk to you about this. And then when I did, it was just kind of pushed to the side. So I was aware that it was there. I explored a bunch of different religions growing up. And then I went through that phase of, is it evil? Because I became born again. So I've had that background.
Like Christian?
And yeah, Southern Baptist born again, like,
All right. Yeah.
And there was a beauty in the way that they really believe in it, but the guilt and the judgment that came with it that's where I veer away. If something comes with guilt or judgment, I grew up in a household like that. So I went to college and I started using tarot cards. One of my good friends was like, ooh, look at this fun little thing. And we got tarot cards and I would use a book. And then my grandfather passed away and I felt like he was around me. And I went to a psychic. We went to a psychic fair and the psychic saw my grandfather and described him to me. And that's when my interest in the spiritual world, in this world, opened up. It was like, oh, maybe there's something there, because he just described my grandfather, and I miss my grandfather so much. And then a couple years later, I graduated from college, went to visit a friend, and she said, I have to take you to see this psychic reader. And I was visiting her for the weekend in Rochester, New York. And I was like, all right, let's go. So I sat in front of this woman, and she blew me away with everything that she told me. It was everything that was going on in my life. And then she picked up all the cards and she said, you need to be doing this. And she handed me the cards and she said, now you give me a reading. And I was like, what? Like my eyes, what? And she said, no, tell me a story. Let the cards tell you a story. And I said, but I don't have the book with the definitions. And she said, no, tell me a story. And we were in this little kiosk in a mall, and people could just come up and sign a sheet and wait for her. And she took the sheet down and she turned people away for the rest of the day. And she sat there with me for, oh God, it must have been 2 or 3 hours. And my friend was getting agitated because she had to keep coming back and leaving and coming back and leaving. And this woman became my mentor. I went back to Boston, Mass, because that's where I was living. And at the time, there was no internet. So we would write handwritten letters back and forth, prehistoric times. And we would talk on the phone. And I decided to move back to Rochester. Mainly, not necessarily because of that, because of a boy. I'll admit that. I was in my 20s, or no, 18, 19. And I went back, and she became my mentor. And that's how I started doing this. I've always had a piece of it in my life, but at times I've pushed it to the side because I was afraid. I was afraid of it and thought I needed to do something in the world that wasn't so woo-woo, or that people would take me seriously. And it's been a journey. It's been an interesting journey. I remember along the way I met a monk. My friend took me to dinner, and her friend had been in corporate America, and he left all of it behind one day and became a monk. And he was in a monastic order. And he went with us to dinner one night. And he looked at me and he put his hands on me, like just, I remember he said, can I lay my hands on you? And I said, yes. And he stood behind me and he laid his hands on me. And the only feeling I can tell you that it felt like was that I had crawled into my grandmother's lap and I was being rocked in a rocking chair. It was so comforting. And he said to me, and this stuck with me, he said, you can heal with your words. And it wasn't until years later that I understood what he meant, because here I am giving readings to people, tapping into.
I love that.
Spirit.
I love that.
Yeah, and doing it through spiritual counseling. So yeah.
How would you have described your intuition up until that point? Like, how were you experiencing it?
There was a difference in the readings I was giving. Messages would come through clearly, but let me give you an example. The readings I were given were more like soap opera readings, because people would sit down across from me and say, I know my boyfriend's cheating on me. Tell me who he's with and what's going on with him. And that's what I mean by ego driven, and it from a very different space. When I really started stepping into that, you can heal with your words, I realized that it was about giving readings to people so that they could live the highest possible version of their lives.
Right. So, but even like, I guess I'll be more clear. Like when I say, how are you experiencing your intuition? I think what I'm really trying to understand is like, you talked about when you were younger, um, this kind of came on board for you as a sort of protection, but was it like, you were receiving messages? Were you seeing things? Were you very empathic to the world around you? Like, how were you experiencing your intuition?
Got it. I'm a big empath, so I'm a big feeler. Um, I'm claircognizant, so I just know things. I'm clairsentient, so I definitely feel things. And I'm clairaudient, so I hear things. Not as much on I'll see kind of things inside my head, but not physically, like auras or angels or things like that.
Yeah. I'm curious to, so one of the things that, I feel like, of course, as humans, we love putting things in categories and being like, well, I'm this or I'm that, or you know what I mean? And especially within the spiritual community, it's like, I'm a clairvoyant or I'm, and I think sometimes we have that like super strong, like I know that for me, hearing is like my strongest gift. But when I'm reading the records, like I'm seeing, feeling, knowing all of it kind of at the same time. It's a very multi-sensory thing. Um, is it similar to you in that
Yeah.
regard? Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't just show up one way,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
It's interesting to me how I communicate with spirit. I'm always curious to know how others do as well, because I think that I know for me, it also really varies on the type of person I'm working with. Like when I'm working with someone very empathic, it's like, whew, I really feel that very intensely. The energy that comes through can be a lot stronger. If I'm also working with someone who's like a channeler of some sort, like, I mean, I'll get woozy and like be shaking and it just varies, in regards to as well, like their consciousness and how open they are and those sorts of things. But I'm always curious to know what the experience is for other readers or channels.
Yeah. It's very multisensory like that. I sometimes, I'll be reading and they'll ask a question and I'll hear a sound and I'll just know that that's it's I just the best way I can say it is I'm I'm guided to a symbol, a sound, a feeling, or something that helps spirit bring the divine story through me to them.
Yeah. Has it evolved over?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And still to this day, Anna, I don't know if you feel this way, but there's that moment as I'm doing what I'm doing that I'm like, where the heck, how am I doing it? Like, and then I'm like, oh, Lorri, step aside. You're just being a channel. It's so funny.
Yeah, I have to really, I mean, especially when in the midst of like a big message or working through something huge with someone, I have to really kind of just stay very disconnected because
Yeah.
my brain will be like, what is happening here? What is going on? Where are
Yeah.
you sure this is, and I had no. So I'm really curious and I'd love to know. So one of the things that I've come across, like I know from my own personal experience, and then certainly working with clients. Well, in doing my research, just kind of reading through some of your blogs and those kinds of things, and you already mentioned, like you grew up with a mother, with mental illness. And what I have really seen multiple times, and again, I experienced this in my own life, is the parent that kind of hurts us the most, the difficult parent plays such a huge role in our awakening and our evolvement into becoming who we are. that they play this real role of kind of ripping the band-aid off, if you will, in some sort of form or fashion. And it's always through pain and heartache. And I'm just curious if that has also been true in your own life. If your mom did help you, like the pain that you experience, and I'm kind of putting that assumption on you, but I can only imagine that growing up and having to step into being an adult, within your life, that wasn't an easy experience as a kid because you didn't get to be a kid. But I'm just curious if that has played a role in really helping you to step into this, the beautiful healing that you're able to offer now to others.
I would say yes, definitely. It wasn't just my mom, though. It was both of my parents. Neither one of them, I don't think either one of them really were ready or wanted to be parents. And I'm not angry about that. I've done a lot of healing around that. I believe that my belief is that the way that we feel about our parents is the way that we end up feeling about God.
Hmm.
So my dad, so with the divine feminine and my mom, the way that I viewed feminine and the divine feminine, I didn't believe in the divine feminine because my mom did not nurture me. She did not know how to nurture. At age 10, I was called down to the principal's office and told to call my grandfather, who screamed at me on the phone and told me that my mom tried to commit suicide and it was my fault that she almost died. So I had that laid on me at like 10, and that it was my responsibility to take care of my mother. With my dad, I remember after they got divorced, and this was right after they got divorced that this happened. I remember visiting my dad and having one of his friends stop over and look at me in surprise and say, "David, you never said you had children." So I had pretty heavy karma in my childhood that I got to heal.
Mm.
And as a result, I remember thinking, yeah, I'm not going to believe in this whole divine feminine crap, because what do I know about nurturing and nourishing? And then on the other side, my dad was the example of, I felt abandoned as a child. So I believed I would either get punished or abandoned. And so I believed that God was this source out there that if I didn't get it right, I was going to get punished or God had abandoned me. So I've started to see through working with spiritual counseling clients, relationships do evolve from the family of origin or however they grew up as a child, their formative years. And then a lot of times there's just this little thread there, either big or little thread, that also ties into their belief in whether or not they can trust spirit or God.
Wow, that's huge. I think that that's really profound, and really resonates with me. That's not something I've ever thought about before, but I grew up in the church and I grew up in the Christian community, and when I discarded my Christian label, I there was a time where I kind of wrestled with the idea of, well, I guess I never really wrestled with the idea of using the word God, because God to me, I was born into this lifetime knowing God, but it was more so wrestling with, like, or at least curious about, why did I use this pronoun he, and why did that always feel so comfortable to me? And like you, like the divine feminine was like, I don't know. I've worked for some women in my life that were very scary, and growing up with my mother, who just very critical, rejected me at every opportunity. And my father was very, he caused a lot of pain too, but we still were. I had something with my dad I never had with my mom, and he was kind of we called him our Spanish mother, because like he was the emotional one, he was the nurturing one. Like when I was a kid and I was sick, I remember him bringing me something. Like my mom was not around, so I didn't ever experience that. So it it always felt natural to me to say God is a man, or at least to use that pronoun to describe God. And it's something I still use, and I explain to people like, this is just my jam. You do your thing. But what you said really makes a lot of sense, and I think that is, like I said, very, very interesting and very profound, and also I think just very true. Very, very true. I just, I always said, well, like when I was in my early 20s and I was really battling with the pain, of my mother and all of this, it was like, there's two types of people in life, those who get past their parents, you forgive them, and those who don't. And I was just kind of determined to forgive, no matter how much it hurt, because I didn't want to turn into my mother, and I didn't want to repeat those mistakes, and I didn't want to carry that. Um, Things I'm still working through for anyone who's listening. I think that's lifelong, but I think that's really incredible that that's tied up, that could also be very much tied up with how we view God.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, kudos to you for saying, you said something very key, and that is you had an awareness that it was either forgive or turn into. And forgiveness is not what people think it is either. It's not turning the other cheek or taking the higher road. That's the ego-driven forgiveness. What forgiveness, true forgiveness is being able to look at a situation through a different lens than you've put on it. And it's about being willing to let go of the attachment you have to the story. Now I can say the story of what happened to me growing up, because I also see it through a different lens, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely.
So there's not a charge anymore. And I've learned, see, that's the beautiful thing. When things trigger and charge me now, I'm starting to be able to go, this is an opportunity to have some healing here. So it's what my spiritual teacher calls becoming the happy learner. So, it's like, okay, I have an opportunity now.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. I mean, that's something I'm aware of, and really trying to get to, like really, really trying to get to. I think I've still got some space, but because my most beautiful growth has come through lessons and triggerings and these kinds of things. And so I'm really working hard to change that mindset, but that's incredible that you have that on your end.
Oh my God, Anna, there are days that there are times that something will come up and I'll be saying it through gritted teeth. I'll be like, I am so grateful this is happening. I don't know why. But then I totally just say, you know what, Spirit, I got to hand this one over to you, and you have to help me see the truth, not my version, but the truth.
Yeah.
And that truly is, what I realized probably about 5 years back, this is relatively new, was that the connection I felt when I was giving people sessions or doing readings was the same connection I wanted to live my life from. I wanted to be able to not only tap into spirit for others, but on a day-to-day basis, when I was my most raw, when I was throwing mental temper tantrums, when I was feeling my most stubborn, when I was pissed, when I was upset for any reason, I want, like, my desire was to be able to get through that and get to, okay, spirit, what's the truth in this? So emotions, hey, there's nothing wrong with emotions, and I have them every single day. I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram.
Oh yeah.
I'm a 4.
I'm a 3.
So yeah.
My dad's a 4.
So
Fours are fun.
fours are the emotional, like, they feel everything and they can build a story around it. And so I've learned that those emotions, I can feel them, and I can also still say, you know what, spirit, I'm pissed. And here's why. And it's like I'm walking with a friend. Like, that's why I have a walking practice. And I go for probably about an hour to 90 minutes a day. I just go for a walk. And I enjoy just being able to act like, I call it strolling with spirit, because I feel like spirit's walking along beside me. And at any point, I can just say, you know what really is triggering me today? I'm pushing my buttons. It's this person that I ran into who thinks that they're this, this, and this. And then I'll go, and then I'll just hear that, that quiet voice of spirit come in and drop something in, like, well, how's that working for you? Like, how's that belief working for you? And that's what makes me laugh, because I'm like, oh, okay. So, but it started as a desire 5 years ago. Like, oh, I love this connection that I'm feeling. I don't want to feel it just when I'm giving readings or sessions with people. I'd like to live my life from this space.
Yeah. I honestly and I don't do this all the time, but there have been quite a few times where if I'm really feeling icky, I'll go into the records just to hang out, just to connect with the energy. You know what I mean? And I love getting outside too. I mean, I did an interview for the podcast last week, and I woke up. It was an early morning interview, and I woke up that morning not happy. And I just knew it was like, I got to change this tune immediately because there's no way. And I had like a reading afterwards. It was like, I've got to flip this script. And I threw myself out the door into the cold just to shift, you know? And I think that when we do those things for ourselves, we're able to connect in more. But at least for me personally, I know that I would love to exist in that space. And the more readings that I do, like we were talking about kind of at the beginning, where this journey has really changed you. And I'm only a few years into mine. I joke, but I'm serious when I say I'm a nicer person. And I know that I'm excited about where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years. You know, like I'm excited of how much change that it has created within me, the healing. And it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been some joyride by any means. But I think that the more that we are open and available to those things, it's really huge. So I know that tarot plays just a huge part in what it is that you do. And you mentioned you started reading tarot when you were in college. But I'd love to know what it is about tarot that you just really, really connect with, really enjoy.
I think it's because I am not a natural clairvoyant. Like, my teacher could see things, see auras and everything. So the cards were pretty to me, and they were the images that I could see. And there's something, the little kid in me gets activated when she gets to look at the cards. It's just a happy place for me. That's simple. I just think they're pretty.
I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, I think, I was listening to a podcast actually of a gentleman who was being interviewed about, he's a channel as well. And he was just talking about kind of what led him to start working with people was his excitement. And I think that when we plug into that, it's like everyone thinks being spiritual is so serious. And there's a time and a place for reverence, but like, oh my gosh, when we're able to, like you said, tap into that. Like when I first started doing readings, I'd like show up. I'm ready. I'm in my space. I've been meditating. I'm feeling very holy, and then I could like barely connect. And when I clicked out of that and just started showing up being my nerdy goofy self, it was like, oh man, I'm plugged in.
That's
So
it.
it's so powerful. There's
Yeah.
nothing that's, I think that's a beautiful answer. And you also wrote a book, Learning the Tarot, which
Mhm.
I didn't know about you previous to checking you out. So tell us about that.
I wrote a book called 90 Days to Learning the Tarot, no memorization required,
Mm.
because one of the things I would see is that people, readers, when they were reading cards, would often just look at a card, point to it if I was receiving a reading, and recite what was in the book. And, you know,
I'm guilty of
the
that, by the way.
and for me, I think that each card holds a story within it. So the left brain comes out when people try to memorize and get the definition right, and it goes into the space of being right or wrong. I like to teach from the space of being right-brained and just allowing sink into the card. What's drawing your attention when you look at the card? Is there a picture? Is there a color? Is there a shape that's calling to you as you're tapping into this person's energy? And that's how they become alive to me, that multisensory feeling you were talking about earlier. So in that book, my intention is to help people connect with their own way of creating expansion in another person and shift away from it needing to be right or wrong to these are the messages coming through. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to memorize 78 definitions. I did at the start. And yes, you can do that. It'll be something nice that you can always lean back into if you're drawing a blank when you're looking at the card. There's a whole life and energy going on with the card as a result of the person sitting across from you. And that's what my intention is in helping people open up to learning how to read the tarot. I used to read these things like you have to be gifted a tarot deck and you must wrap it in silk and put it in blah 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 blah. Anytime there's a rule, I'll be the first person to be like, nah, yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I remember some people have asked me before, do you have to be gifted a deck? And I just start laughing. I'm like, if I waited for someone to gift me a deck, I'd be using the same deck from 30 years ago. Like, no, gift it to yourself. Like, gift someone, yes, gift it to yourself, So my book is a way to make it fun, make it personal, and to get away from the traditional rules of how to read the tarot.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I enjoy the tarot, and tarot. I guess it depends on who you talk to. Um, but when I had kind of started trying to learn it, it was very much, and this is just kind of my brain. I like learning systems, and then I like destroying them. Like kind of once I learn them. But I got so overwhelmed, I think, with the all of the memorization, and it just really wasn't fully my thing. I think it was something for me to tap into, but you're so right. And the people that I feel like are the most natural with it are those who are just able to let that stuff go. And I think that's kind of with spirituality in general, right? Like we were talking about earlier, that ego self who's like, I want to be right about my card versus like, what am I feeling with this? How is this jiving, you know? Um, and I love that. Are you familiar with Lindsay Mack? Do you know who she is?
Mm-mm.
She's
Mm-mm.
incredible. She developed a form of tarot called Soul Tarot, and it's
Mm.
very different. I think you would really resonate with it. She's just an unbelievable teacher, and she experienced a very traumatic and violent childhood, and the tarot was really what she turned to. Um, but she said something once that really resonated with me, that like, you know, each card has its own energy.
Mhm.
And when I look at the tarot like that, it's so much easier for me to kind of connect with what this energy might be that's coming through versus the card itself. You're so right. It's like a right brain versus left brain thing. Um,
It's also I am more interested. Let's say that you came to me to learn how to read the tarot, right? I am more interested in helping you tap into your own inner teacher than me becoming your teacher.
yeah,
Like, because you're going to be with you for the rest of your life.
yeah,
And it's really about opening people up to trusting. There's nothing special about what we do when it comes down to it, Anna. We've chosen to say yes to the call of intuition. It's there and it's available for every single person. We all use it in some way in our lives. Even the most staunch, I do not believe in intuition.
they're usually
They
the
use
most
it.
intuitive.
Yeah. So that's, it's the book is more of a bridge to helping someone become their own inner teacher.
I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. I think that's so important. It's like one of the reasons why I started teaching people how to read the Akashic Records, because I don't want people to just come to me or lean on me. Like I want them to empower themselves. You know, this is a tool that's available for anyone.
Mhm.
So I'd like to kind of dive into your work as a spiritual counselor and just kind of talk about that a little bit. Um, so you went through the Power of Love ministry. Is
Mhm.
that correct? What is this work for you, and kind of how does that look with clients?
So I came across my spiritual teacher, probably my true spiritual teacher, in 2015. And she is Reverend Jennifer Hadley. She runs the Power of Love ministry. Before that, it was always men that were my spiritual teachers. And so I know that this was the healing around divine feminine when I met Jennifer, because one of the first things Spirit said to me was, she's a female. You won't be able to fall in love with her and hope to get her attention that way. You're going to listen. And it made me chuckle. And so when I just started going to her classes, and she started talking about her spiritual counseling program. And I had been a life coach before that, a spiritual life coach. And just everything lined up in a way that there was no way I was not going to go to this thing. I thought, oh, well, I don't know where she's going to have this. At the time I was living paycheck to paycheck. And the next week at class, she said, well, I've decided on my location for the spiritual counseling training intensive. It's going to be in Boone, North Carolina. I lived in Raleigh at the time. I'm like, okay. Or no, I lived here at the time. I was like, oh, okay. I can drive there. Great. Then I thought, well, I don't know if I can go because it's really hard to get time off work. At the time, I was a full-time massage therapist, and it just wasn't easy getting time off, especially like 2 weeks beforehand, right? You always had to fill out forms and find people. I walked in, it was a Sunday. I walked into my supervisor's office. She was sitting at her computer, and I said, you know, my spiritual teacher is coming to Boone in 2 weeks, and she's doing a training for spiritual counseling. I was interested in taking it, and my supervisor didn't even look up at me. She kept typing, and in my mind, I was like, "Oh, that means no." And she looks up. She goes, "You're off the schedule. I just took you off. Go." There was no like. I was like, "Oh, Spirit, you definitely want me to go." So I went, and I just kept getting a giant yes. And I knew I was going to go for the certification at the end of the week. And for the certification, you have to do 111 client sessions and provide paperwork. And I came from being a spiritual life coach where you advise and you do this and you talk more than the client does, to you really listen. You listen to spirit. The questions you ask the client, the things you share with the client, or whatever spirit's sending through you. So the only difference, spiritual counseling became a session where I was doing the same thing I was with cards, just not using cards. So I knew that that was the way I wanted to go. And then when I started spiritual counseling, I saw that every person that came to me was a part of me, like the prodigal son, coming back home for me to love. And each person that had a session with me, I got the added bonus of a healing too. So I was hooked.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a session with a client the other day, and part of me was thinking kind of throughout, like, this is so much for me too. Like that, like, is this obvious to her that this is about me as well? Or like, it just felt like I was being uh uh I don't even know how to explain it. Like seen, vulnerable, naked. I don't even know how to fully explain it. It was just like, when the session was over, I just sat there and thought like, holy crap. That's really beautiful. So I know in my own work, and this is like I call myself a spiritual guide, and for me, like it's so difficult this word coach because like you're talking about, it's this like I don't want this to be like a me talking thing. Like this is a different form of the Akashic records where it's like this is a partnership. This is like, I'm just again, I'm
Yeah.
channeling but like in a different way, for folks. And I think that our I think that the paradigm has shifted in that direction. I don't think that that old way works anymore because, like you've talked about, like even with your tarot students, like you want to empower them. You know,
Well, it's the coach is masculine. Come on, let's go. The whistle. The counselor, the way we show up is very feminine.
yeah. Well, it's such um, a different approach, and I think the word coach as well really carries some energy with it. And that's just my own
It does.
personal
It
thing.
does.
It's interesting
Well,
that you say it's masculine because that makes very much sense to me.
well, that's why I shifted. Like I could feel the more I healed that feminine in myself, the more I started shifting even in what I was offering people into this space of the feminine and being a counselor and listening.
That's beautiful. Yeah, shifting out of that masculine into feminine, I think is something. Well, it's happening collectively right now, right?
I believe so. That doesn't mean it's correct, but I believe so.
I believe too. So it could just be you and I. If that's all right.
That's okay.
So I wanted to, before we, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, but like you've got some really beautiful session or yeah, I'll stop. Slow down, Anna. You've got a really beautiful promotion going on right now that's not for Valentine's Day, but I feel like just kind of coincides with Valentine's Day. It's a special for February and March with your readings. And what's interesting about this, I don't know if you're aware of this, but especially the energy towards the end of February is really going to be lending itself towards love. And we got a lot of interesting Neptunian, Jupiter, like some really cool stuff. So not only I feel like are you in full alignment with the theme of 2022 being relationship, with ourselves and with others, but I just thought it was really cool what you were doing. So I'd love for you to share with us more about that.
Sure. Well, I was inspired because obviously it's Valentine's Day this month, and I'm a big proponent of self-love as well as creating this holy divine relationship with another person. And I started looking at decks, and I found this amazing deck called the Modern Love Tarot. It's very inclusive. And I fell in love with it, and I reached out to the woman who created the deck, and I said, hey, I'm running this special. I'm going to be solely using your deck because I've been inspired by it. Can I share a picture that I took? And she was like, of course, absolutely. Like, she's another one of us where it's not about competition in this world. It's about supporting each other. And so I thought, how would I like to help people? Because let's face it, when people come for readings, it's either about their career, it's about money or love.
Yeah.
Typically, not always. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to create this spirit. Show me what I can create. So the special that I'm running in February and March is it's a combo reading where it focuses on self-love first, and then you can either focus on self-love and a current love, somebody that you're currently with, and how to really make that the best relationship ever, or self-love and it could be a relatively new person that has entered, or a future love coming in. And then, because I know there are people out there, I'm offering what I call the ultimate, which is, all right, you're going to be interested in self-love and a current love, but you're still going to ask me if there's someone better out there for you. So let's add that on. Or you're trying to decide between two different people, because that happens as well. So we've got the reading that is the 2-part reading or the 3-part reading. And those are the specials I'm offering. One's called Current Love, one's called New and Future Love, and the other one's called the Ultimate Love reading.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect timing. And then finally, I just kind of wanted to touch on before we dive into our lightning round, but you have a project coming up this year, and you might have more you want to share with us, but I know that you're going to be launching a membership site. So I'd love to know more about that. I saw on your site that you do like weekly kind of readings for groups. Is that kind of similar, or like, I'll stop talking.
Well, I offer the program you're talking about is called Weekly Insights, and that is a subscription-based service right now that I currently offer, where every Monday morning I sit down and everyone that's a participant gets a personalized reading for the week, insights for the week. And it's usually about a paragraph long, 4 or more sentences. Although now that there's this magical little thing on Word that takes dictation, it usually ends up being about 10 sentences. So it's actually more full. And so every week people get in their email a pretty little piece of stationery that my VA has designed with the reading that I put their weekly insight for the week. That's one thing. The membership site that I'm so excited to offer that's coming up, we're going to launch it March 1st, is every month, what will be available to the members is they will be able to click on the site and do what I used to do, which is called Tarot Tuesday, which there will be 3 cards up. They'll click on the back of a card and it'll take them to a video for their card for the week. The membership will also come with one monthly class with me, live class with me, where I'll be sharing spiritual tools or tips that people can actually use to improve the quality of their life and tap more into their own intuition. And they can come and ask questions. As well as once a month, I'll be doing a tarot happy hour where they can come live and ask one question in a group setting and have that answered. The recordings will be available for both. On top of that, if you're a member, you will get 10% off of whatever monthly special that I'm running in my newsletter. So let's say that I'm running a special that is $99. You get basically $10 off that special price for being a member as well. And the membership is only going to be $25 a month, which I think is a super affordable thing. And my intention is to create a like-minded community where people can come together in these settings and get to know, oh, there are other people out there that are just as interested in this as I am. And if you join for the year, you'll get a complimentary birthday reading, a reading during your birthday month. So I'm really excited about that and creating a community now of like-minded people that want to come together to create more clarity in their lives.
That's awesome. I love that. That sounds like the place to be.
Just to have fun. That's it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
community is huge right now. You know, we need to be around like-minded people. I think that's just so important. Okay, so let's dive into the lightning round. So I've just got a couple of questions for you.
Feel like I'm on a game show. This is great. Let me take a sip of water first.
I need my Vanna White or someone.
I love it. Okay, go.
Or my little hot pool boy.
Cabana boy. Okay.
Cabana boy, there we go. That's the right word. Okay, so number 1, what is the one habit that you can't live without?
Meditation.
Number 2, what does spirituality mean for you?
Judgment. Love.
What was the first word? You cut out.
Non-judgment.
Mm.
Realizing where I'm trying to live in a space of, oh, that's right. Oh, that's wrong. Oh, I want someone to take my side because I'm right and they're wrong. Like being able to step back into a space of non-duality and just from a space of awareness. Oh, okay. That's what's happening instead of that's right or wrong.
What is your advice to anyone who's looking to find their purpose?
That I'm not someone that likes to give advice. Just ask yourself what makes your heart sing and come from a place of love. Do what you love. That's your purpose.
Love it. And final question here. Where can people connect with you online?
They can connect through my website, which is readingswithlorri.com. And just trying to think, am I out there anywhere else? I have a YouTube channel we're going to be working on building this year.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will include all of the links in the show notes for folks to make it super easy to find you and learn more about your special and your upcoming membership site. So, Lorri, it has been awesome to talk with you, and I'm just So grateful and thankful that you came and hung out with me, and it was just as fabulous as I knew it was going to be. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Anna. And thank you for the work that you are doing in this world with people. Yeah. Thank you for the light that you're willing to shine.
Well, and right back at you for sure. I have been in the lobby when your clients have come out and like are crying because they're so overwhelmed with joy and just yeah, and blown away. So I know. I have seen the power of Lorri.
Well, and I would love to do I'm just putting a plug in here. Let's do a trade soon.
Let's do it. I'm,
I
I'm
would
here
love that.
for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for being with us today and joining us. If you are inspired by today's interview, hit me up, send me an email, share with me what resonated with you. I would love to know. You can also leave us a review on iTunes or a rating, which is always helpful. Be sure to sign up for the email list to receive podcast updates, other helpful resources, and don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next week.